I'm Marin Hayes, 30, and I've always prided myself on my perfect credit score. So when my phone buzzed with a bank alert about an $800,000 loan payment due, my heart nearly stopped. There had to be a mistake. But the rep confirmed. Everything matched my name, my social security number, even my signature, and the property address 2114 Oak Ridge Lane, Pinecrest Hills. That's the same neighborhood where my sister Sloane had been house hunting. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you never thought would hurt you, like, comment, subscribe. You won't believe how I took everything back. My life in Seattle was exactly how I'd planned it. After graduating with honors in finance from the University of Washington, I landed a job at Alderstone Partners, one of the most respected investment firms in the Pacific Northwest. Over 6 years, I worked my way up from junior analyst to senior financial advisor. I managed portfolios for high net worth clients, negotiated multi-million dollar contracts, and earned a reputation for being disciplined, focused, and reliable. My apartment in Fremont wasn't flashy, just a quiet, one-bedroom space with worn hardwood floors and afternoon light that poured in through the windows. But it was mine. Every piece of furniture had been chosen with care, bought in cash, never on credit. I knew the cost of debt all too well. My parents, Margaret and William Hayes, had drilled it into me since childhood: live within your means, save before you spend, and always protect your name. My relationship with them was stable, if not particularly emotional. Sunday dinners in their modest home outside the city had become a ritual. My mom overcooked enough food for an army. My dad and I talked market trends and economic forecasts. There was no drama, just predictability, and I liked it that way. But then there was Sloane, my older sister by 3 years. From the outside, people assumed we were close. We smiled at family events, exchanged gifts on birthdays, and tagged each other in the occasional throwback photo online. But that was the surface. Underneath, it was something else entirely. Years of rivalry dressed up as sisterhood. Sloane had always been the golden one, the blonde hair, the bright blue eyes, the laugh that filled every room. Where I was cautious, she was magnetic. Where I worked for recognition, she simply attracted it. She could sell sunscreen in a snowstorm. My grandmother once joked, and she wasn't wrong. I was the quieter one, the numbers girl. I took after Dad, with his practical sensibilities and love for balance sheets. Sloane was Mom's image, effortlessly charming, impulsive, and accustomed to being adored. From the time we were kids, there was always a quiet script playing in the background. I was the stable one. She was the star. It started small, with little things. The birthday gift I loved that ended up broken in her room. The school projects I stayed up nights to finish, only to find her name scribbled over mine. When I spoke up, she'd cry. My parents would tell me, "Be generous with your sister." So I learned that being right didn't matter nearly as much as being quiet. Over time, I built boundaries. I stopped lending, stopped sharing, stopped expecting fairness. While Sloane bounced from one passion project to another, I built my career. While she married Gavin Reed in a wedding that drained most of our parents' retirement savings, I kept working late and saving every bonus. We were sisters by blood, but strangers in practice. And I had accepted that. I had created a life with structure, purpose, and distance. Just enough distance. But as I would soon learn, sometimes distance isn't protection. Sometimes, it's just the quiet before everything unravels. The Friday before everything collapsed, I turned 30. It wasn't a big celebration, just a small dinner in my apartment with a few close friends. Eli, and, surprisingly, Sloane and Gavin. I hadn't expected them to come. Sloane rarely showed up unless the guest list included someone she needed to impress, or unless there was an open bar. But that evening, they walked through my door right on time, smiling like everything in our relationship was whole and uncomplicated. Sloane wore a navy dress that shimmered under the pendant lights in my kitchen. Her hair was freshly blown out, her makeup flawless as always. Gavin followed behind her carrying a tall gift bag and a chilled bottle of champagne I would later realize cost more than a week's worth of groceries. To new beginnings. The tag read, in Sloane's dramatic cursive. Happy birthday, baby sister, she said, drawing me into a hug that felt too tight, too long, like she was trying to hold something in. And then she whispered it, softly, just for me. Everything's about to change. I pulled back, blinking at her. What? She just smiled. That knowing tilt of the head she always used when she wanted you to think she had secrets worth envying. You'll see. I laughed, brushing it off. Maybe she thought Eli was planning to propose. Maybe she was finally pregnant. With Sloane. The line between surprise and performance was always blurry. Dinner was casual. The conversation stayed light. Work gossip, real estate prices, Gavin's latest pitch for a boutique hotel in Portland. Sloane seemed unusually relaxed, her phone barely making an appearance, her attention unusually centered on me. At one point, she complimented my throw pillows, which practically made Eli do a double take. I tried to enjoy the moment. I really did. After dessert, Sloane handed me a card, heavy paper, hand-lettered, too elegant for the setting. Inside was a message written in ink that shimmered faintly under the light. To the next chapter. Bigger things are coming. Marion, much bigger. It was almost sweet, except it didn't feel like her. Or rather, it felt like too much of her. The version that always performed sincerity when something was being hidden underneath. That instinct flared, but I tucked it away. I didn't want suspicion to ruin what felt like the first peaceful interaction we'd had in years. After everyone left, Eli stayed behind to help me clean up. He handed me a glass of wine and curled up next to me on the couch. Your sister was different tonight, he said. Yeah, I replied. Eyes on the gift bag now sitting untouched on my coffee table. She said something weird. What do you mean? She whispered. Everything's about to change. Just like that. No explanation. No context. Eli frowned. Did she seem upset? No, I said slowly. She seemed pleased, like she knew something I didn't. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that gently presses at your chest. That night, I dreamed I was in a house I didn't recognize, walking from room to room, searching for something I'd forgotten. The walls were too white, the windows too large. I kept opening doors, but none of them led outside. When I woke the next morning, the dream faded quickly. I had work emails to respond to, errands to run, and a quarterly report to polish before Monday. I tucked Sloane's strange comment in the back of my mind, alongside 100 other curious but forgettable things she'd said over the years. But in hindsight, that whisper was not random. It was not sweet. It was not hopeful. It was a warning. And I should have listened. It happened the following Tuesday morning, 3 days after my birthday. I was at my desk, halfway through a cup of lukewarm coffee, prepping for a client meeting. Eli had just texted me something sweet about dinner plans when my phone buzzed again. At first, I thought it was just one of my usual banking alerts, a deposit clearing or a low balance warning from the account I used for auto payments. But this one was different. Your monthly payment of $4,267.89 for loan number 983201 Unseen is due in 7 days. I stared at the notification, then read it again, and again. My stomach tightened. There had to be a mistake. I didn't have any loans with payments like that. I had a small car loan, manageable, One low-limit credit card I paid off every month. I didn't even carry student debt anymore. But this a $4,000 payment. I opened the app, scrolled, tapped. It was real. Loan number, balance due, payment schedule, all linked to my name. Still thinking it had to be a technical glitch. I called the customer service number listed at the bottom. A woman with a soft voice answered. "Thank you for calling Ridgeway National. This is Tasha. How can I help you today? I just received a notification about a loan payment," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I think there's been a mistake. I haven't taken out any loans recently, especially not one with a payment this high." Tasha asked for my name and the last 4 digits of my social security number. I gave them, heart pounding. There was a long pause. Then she said, carefully, "According to our records, Ms. Hayes, you initiated a home loan for $800,000 approximately 6 weeks ago. The property address is listed as 21144 Oak Ridge Lane, Pinecrest Hills." I froze. Pinecrest Hills. That name rang like a distant bell. A place I'd heard before, said by someone else. Then it hit me. Sloan. She had mentioned it just a few months ago, showing me some listing on her phone. "This neighborhood is stunning." She'd sighed. "I could totally see myself in a place like that." "I've never applied for a home loan," I said slowly. "And I've never heard of that address until right now. This isn't just a mistake, it's fraud." "I understand your concern," Tasha replied. "And you're right. This is serious. I'm going to transfer you to our fraud investigation unit. They'll walk you through the dispute process, freeze the account, and begin an internal review." The next hour passed in a blur of verifications, passwords, and legalese. I canceled my afternoon meeting. My hands were shaking, my throat dry. My signature, my identity, had been used to borrow nearly $1 million, and no one had caught it until now. That night, I pulled all 3 of my credit reports. What I saw made me physically sick. Not just the mortgage. There were 3 new credit cards opened in my name over the past month. Balances totaling more than $50,000. Charges for high-end furniture, appliances, electronics, all shipped to the same address, 21114 Oak Ridge Lane. With trembling fingers, I typed it into Google Maps. The screen loaded slowly, then revealed a pristine colonial-style house behind a black wrought iron gate, circular driveway, manicured hedges, pine trees lining the perimeter. It looked like something out of a luxury real estate magazine. Not just beautiful, but intimidatingly expensive. And it was mine. On paper. It was all mine. But I'd never set foot inside. Never signed a single document. Never authorized $1 of it. My mind raced through every possibility: hackers, data leaks, phishing emails. But none of it explained how someone could have accessed my social security number, employment history, digital signature, even tax returns. Unless I leaned back in my chair. Unless it was someone who already knew all those things. Someone who shared my childhood home. Someone who'd hugged me 3 days ago and whispered, "Everything's about to change." And suddenly, I realized she wasn't wrong. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of that house, 2114 Oak Ridge Lane, flashed behind my eyelids like a warning light I couldn't shut off. The manicured lawn, the crisp white columns, the front door that technically belonged to me, and the number, $800,000, was ringing in my ears like a fire alarm I couldn't silence. I kept circling back to one question: who would do this to me? The evidence pointed to something personal, intimate. Whoever had forged my name didn't just steal numbers off a database. They had my driver's license, my social security number. They knew my employment history, my salary, the exact cadence of how I signed my name. And then I remembered the dinner with Sloan 3 months ago. A rare girls' night out. We'd gone to a little Italian place in Ballard, shared a bottle of wine, Talked about nothing in particular. That night, I'd lost my wallet, or thought I had. I tore apart my apartment, retraced every step. Nothing. I ended up replacing my ID and cards. The whole thing had seemed annoying but harmless at the time. But now, it clicked. That night hadn't been harmless. It had been strategic. I picked up my phone and called Sloan. Straight to voicemail. I sent a text. Need to talk. Urgent. Call me ASAP. No response. Next, I called my mother. She answered on the third ring. Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay? Has Sloan mentioned buying a new house recently? There was a pause. Just a breath. But I heard it. Why do you ask? She said carefully. Please. Mom. It's important. She sighed. Yes. She and Gavin just closed on a place a few weeks ago. It's in Pinecrest Hills. They're throwing a housewarming this Saturday. My mouth went dry. What's the address? She rustled around. Hold on. Let me grab the invitation. Here it is. 2114, Oak Ridge Lane. Why? Honey. What's going on? You sound strange. But I was already gone. I mumbled something vague and hung up. My chest tightened. My hands trembled as I opened my inbox and started scrolling. I knew the message had to be there. I just hadn't noticed it at the time. Buried somewhere beneath work updates and monthly statements. And then I saw it. Subject line: Our Dream Home. Housewarming. This Saturday. Attached a glittering gif of champagne glasses clinking. Sent by Sloan. 3 days ago. I hadn't opened it. I'd assumed it was just another one of her flashy events. Another evening of forced smiles and fake compliments. I never imagined the address on the invitation would be tied to my identity, my credit, and my future. I clicked it open. There it was, in bold lettering. You're invited to celebrate with Sloan and Gavin Reed in their stunning new home, 2114 Oak Ridge Lane, Pinecrest Hills. I stared at the screen, numb. My sister had bought a house with my name, with my credit, with my financial life, and now, she was throwing a party to celebrate it. A party I was supposed to attend. My head spun. The audacity, the confidence, the ease with which she had stolen from me, then smiled across my birthday table and toasted to new beginnings. This wasn't just fraud. This wasn't just betrayal. This was her parading around in a life she'd taken from me, and daring me to come see it. And suddenly, her words from that night rang louder than ever. Everything's about to change. M. She had known exactly what she meant. And now, so did I. The next morning, I walked into Ridgeway National Bank with a folder of printed statements, a pit in my stomach, and a growing sense of dread I could no longer ignore. They ushered me into a small conference room, glass walls, clean lines, air that smelled like toner and anxiety. A man in a dark gray suit introduced himself as Gregory Shaw, a senior investigator with the bank's fraud division. Beside him sat Angela Kim, a forensic loan specialist whose calm, efficient demeanor made it clear this wasn't her first case. I took the seat across from them, clutching the folder in my lap like it was armor. Ms. Hayes, Gregory began, we've reviewed your call and the reports you submitted. We understand this is a distressing situation, and we want to walk you through what we've found. He opened a thick file and slid several documents across the table. Angela leaned forward. This is the mortgage application submitted under your name, she said. And this, she added, pointing to a signature at the bottom of the first page, is what was used to validate the loan. I stared at it. At first glance, it looked like mine, carefully looped, neatly slanted. But the longer I studied it, the more I saw the differences. The tail on the M was too sharp. The cross on the T in Hayes extended too far. It wasn't mine. It was almost mine. That's not my signature, I said quietly. Someone tried to mimic it, But it's wrong. Gregory nodded. We thought so too. Angela flipped to the next page. This is the identification provided during the online verification process. My breath caught. It was a scan of my driver's license, my photo, my name, my address, the exact license I'd reported missing 3 months ago after dinner with Sloane. I had assumed it had slipped out of my wallet. I hadn't considered that someone had slipped it out on purpose. I looked up slowly, the weight of recognition settling like lead in my chest. How much personal information would someone need to apply for a loan this size, I asked. Gregory leaned back, folding his hands. Quite a bit. Social security number, employment verification, tax returns, bank statements, security answers. It's not something just anyone could fake. I swallowed hard. Sloane would have access to most of that, I said, almost in disbelief at hearing the words out loud. She's been in my apartment dozens of times. She knows my birthday, my mother's maiden name, probably even the name of my first pet. Angela nodded solemnly. Unfortunately, family fraud is more common than people think, but it's rare to see it carried out at this scale. Do you have any direct proof that it was her, I asked? Not yet, Gregory said. But we've begun a deeper investigation. If she used a personal device or home network to submit the application, we may be able to trace the IP address. And we're requesting access to security footage from the local branch where additional documents were submitted. I stared down at the pages in front of me, pages bearing my name, but not my hand, my photo, but not my consent, my credit, but not my choice. It wasn't just betrayal, it was identity theft. And not from a stranger halfway across the world, but from the person who'd stood in my kitchen 3 nights ago and toasted to my future. A silence settled in the room. Then I said it, quietly, almost to myself. She took my wallet on purpose. Gregory raised an eyebrow. I thought I lost it months ago. But now I think she planned it. She waited until I wasn't looking, took my ID, set this all in motion. And I didn't even realize. Angela slid a clean sheet of paper across the table. We'll need a full written statement, Ms. Hayes, and I'd recommend placing a freeze on your credit immediately. I nodded, picking up the pen with a hand that shook more than I wanted to admit. As I began writing, one thought echoed louder than all the others. Sloane hadn't just taken my name. She'd stolen the life I hadn't even lived yet. When I left the bank that afternoon, I wasn't just numb, I was changed. Somewhere between seeing my forged signature and staring at the stolen scan of my driver's license, something in me had shifted. The disbelief was still there, but it was sharpening into something colder, clearer, a quiet resolve that if my sister really was behind this, I wasn't going to let it slide, not this time. That night, I called Noah Briggs, a former investigator and longtime contact of Eli's. Noah owed Eli a favor from a case he'd helped resolve at the hospital, and I wasn't above calling in that debt. He picked up on the second ring. This is Briggs. I introduced myself, gave a brief overview, and asked if he had time for a rush job. There was a pause. Then, if what you're saying is true, Marin, you've got a serious case on your hands. I'll take it. By the following morning, Noah had already started digging, while he chased the legal and financial paper trail. I turned to what I knew Sloane couldn't resist, her own reflection, specifically, her digital one. I opened her Instagram first. It was private, but I followed her. Of course. We all did. That was part of the unspoken family contract. Like pretending she was just free-spirited instead of reckless. Her most recent post was just a week old. A carefully curated photo of her standing on the front steps of 2114 Oak Ridge Lane, head tilted, designer sunglasses, captioned with dreams do come true, #new home, #blessed. I stared at it for a long time. Not just at the photo, but at the confidence, the audacity. She wasn't hiding what she'd done, she was broadcasting it, turning my stolen future into a backdrop for her brand. I started scrolling. There were videos of the marble fireplace, filtered in warm tones, stories of Gavin grilling in the backyard, wearing an apron that read King of the Castle, close-up shots of the gourmet kitchen, boomerangs in the walk-in closet. One of her followers commented, "How did you guys afford this place?" "It's gorgeous," Sloane replied. "Hard work and smart financial planning pay off, hat deserved." My chest tightened. I wasn't sure if I wanted to scream or laugh. Deserved. She had no idea what that word actually meant. I moved to Facebook. There, I found the full digital invitation to the housewarming party, animated gold script reading, "Celebrate with us," floating across a photo of the grand entryway. My credit was paying for her catered shrimp platters. My name was underwriting her open bar. I clicked into the guest list. Neighbors, old friends, extended family, clients of Gavin's, people who knew me, people who didn't, all invited to admire a house Sloane hadn't earned, financed with a future she'd stolen. That night, Noah called with his first update. "Your sister's husband, Gavin, his development company's in trouble," he said. "Deep trouble. They've been using credit cards to cover basic operations. Payroll's behind. If they applied for that loan under their names, it never would have been approved. So they used mine." I said flatly, "Looks that way. I'm still pulling records." But so far, every sign points to her being the one who submitted the online application. "I'm working on linking the IP address." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Keep going." After we hung up, I sat in the dark with nothing but the glow of my laptop screen. Dozens of images from Sloane's social media still open, each one a thread in the web she'd spun. And for the first time since this began, I felt something deeper than anger. I felt hunted, like I'd been quietly tracked, studied, and used. Not by a stranger, but by the one person I'd spent a lifetime trying to forgive. And that's when it became real. Not just on paper, not just in court filings, but in my bones. This wasn't just fraud. It was a betrayal engineered with my own history, my own trust, and it was only just beginning. By Thursday evening, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I called my parents and asked them to come over. "There's something I need to talk to you about," I said. "Both of you, in person." They didn't ask many questions. They just said yes, like they always did. An hour later, they arrived. My dad in his usual fleece vest, my mom carrying a Tupperware of lemon bars she insisted I keep in the fridge. They sat side by side on my couch, looking concerned, but calm, like maybe I was going to tell them Eli and I were moving in together, or that I'd finally decided to buy a place. They weren't ready. I didn't ease them into it. I didn't have the luxury of gentleness. "Did you help Sloane and Gavin buy their new house?" I asked. My mom blinked. "What? No, sweetheart. Of course not. You know we couldn't afford something like that," my father added. "Our retirement accounts are modest at best. And you know how expensive Pinecrest Hills is." I nodded. "Exactly. So, how do you think they afforded an $800,000 home when Gavin's company is nearly bankrupt and Sloane hasn't held a steady job in years?" They exchanged a look, one of those quick glances full of silent questions and unspoken worry. My mother hesitated. "Sloane said Gavin made some smart investments that paid off recently." We didn't ask for details. "You didn't find that suspicious?" I asked. "Didn't it occur to you that it might be too good to be true, Marin?" My dad said gently. "What are you saying?" I took a breath. Then I told them about the bank alert, the forged mortgage application, the credit cards, the property at 21114 Oak Ridge Lane, the missing driver's license. the fabricated documents, and finally, my conclusion. It was Sloane. She used my information to buy that house. She stole my identity, my credit, my future, and you two were just going to show up to that party like nothing was off. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father's jaw tightened. No, my mom whispered. That can't be right. Sloane wouldn't do something like that. Like what? Mom, I said, voice rising. Like stealing. Because she has. Over and over. You just didn't call it that. I stood and started pacing. She took my limited edition Barbie when I was 6 and destroyed it. She borrowed my clothes without asking in high school and returned them stained. She used my student ID to sneak into events in college when she lost hers. She bought things on our shared Amazon account and left me with the charges. She's been taking from me her entire life. They were silent. You always told me to be generous, to let it go, that it wasn't worth making a scene. But now she's committed federal fraud. She's ruined my credit. She's risked my career. She didn't just take a toy or a sweater. She took my name. My father stood, hands on his hips, brow furrowed in that way he did when facing numbers that didn't add up. If this is true, he said quietly, then it's a felony. She could go to prison. I know, I said. Do you think I want that? My voice cracked. Do you think I like saying these things out loud? My mother began to cry. There has to be another explanation. Maybe Gavin did it. Maybe she didn't know. I shook my head. Stop. Please. You've been making excuses for her our whole lives. I need you to see her for who she really is, not who you hoped she'd be. They left a short while later, promising to speak with her, to hear her side. But I already knew how that would go. She'd deny it, cry, say I was jealous, turn it around until they questioned their own memories. It was the same story, the same script, but I wasn't reading from it anymore. This time, I was rewriting it. The day after confronting my parents, I got a call from Noah Briggs. I've got something. He said, you're going to want to hear this. He'd tracked down the tech who'd worked on Sloane's laptop a month prior. According to the technician, Sloane had come in complaining about a sluggish processor. But before she left, she'd asked a very specific question. Can you show me how to edit PDF files like, change what's written without it looking obvious? Noah's voice was even. She was asking how to alter documents. Marin, mortgage-level documents. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was strategy, premeditation, a fully formed plan executed in steps. I thanked him, hung up, and sat in silence for several minutes, staring at the wall. Then I picked up the phone again, this time to call Tessa Morgan, an old college friend and now a respected attorney specializing in financial crimes. I hadn't seen her in years, but she answered on the second ring. I read your message, she said without preamble. And Marin, this is serious. Like felony-level serious. I told her everything. From the forged documents to the social media posts to the stolen license and loan. When I mentioned that Sloane had altered PDFs, Tessa didn't even pause. That's fraud with intent, she said. Combined with identity theft and false loan documentation, she could be facing federal charges. 3 to 5 years, maybe more. My stomach turned. What are my options? You can pursue criminal charges, she said. The state or federal prosecutor would likely take the case once we provide the evidence. Or, if you want to avoid court, we can file civil action, force her to transfer the house or sell it to cover the debt. But either way, you need leverage. Leverage like what I asked. Like a public admission, a signed confession, a documented confrontation in front of credible witnesses. And that's when the idea hit me. The party. Sloane's precious housewarming. Her performance. her perfect audience. She had stolen my name to buy that house. Maybe it was time she heard it, out loud, in the middle of the empire she'd built from my identity. I called Noah again. Would you be willing to meet me at the house before the party? I want you there when it happens. I'll be there, he said without hesitation. Then I contacted Gregory Shaw at the bank. I want to confront her directly, I told him. At the house. During the party, there was a long pause on the other end. Ms. Hayes, that's unorthodox. I'm not asking for drama, I said. I'm asking for accountability. And you said it yourself. The house is legally in my name. He exhaled. If that's the route you want to take, I'll bring copies of the loan documents and the bank's findings. But I'll need to speak as a formal representative of the investigation. No theatrics. No theatrics. I promised. By Friday morning, the plan was in motion. Tessa reviewed the legality. Noah gathered the evidence. Gregory prepared the paperwork. I printed screenshots, emails, texts, anything that proved what she'd done, anything that made it undeniable. That night, Eli sat beside me on the couch as I double-checked the documents. Are you sure? He asked gently. Yes, I said. I've let her rewrite the narrative my entire life. This time, I get to be the one holding the truth. He nodded. Then I'll be there, right beside you. Saturday loomed. The housewarming party everyone was buzzing about. Neighbors, family, and former classmates. Sloane had no idea she'd invited the one guest who was about to bring the whole fantasy down. And for the first time in weeks, I felt clear. Not angry, not afraid, just ready. At exactly 4:30 on Saturday afternoon, I met Noah and Gregory Shaw a block away from 2114 Oak Ridge Lane, the house Sloane had stolen and now called her dream home. Gregory carried a leather portfolio, crisp and full of evidence. Noah arrived with a manila folder tucked beneath his arm and that quiet, steady look that told me he'd seen far worse, but still took this seriously. I wore a simple black dress. Clean lines. Nothing flashy. Not a hair out of place. I didn't want anyone to say I came to start a scene. I wanted them to remember that I came with facts. We walked the block together. The house stood ahead. Regal. Imposing. The kind of property that didn't just say wealth, it whispered power. Gregory stopped at the side gate and consulted a note in his hand. According to the loan documents, a spare key is stored in the lockbox for appraiser access, the code 8295. It clicked open on the first try. We stepped inside. The house was stunning. White marble floors, a grand staircase, the scent of fresh flowers and new paint. Caterers moved quietly through the kitchen, arranging hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. One of them looked up. Mrs. Phillips. No, I said. I'm Marin Hayes, the legal owner of this house. Her eyes widened. She said nothing more, and quietly backed away. Room by room, we moved through the space, designer labels still hanging in the master closet. A receipt on the dresser for a $12,000 bedroom set. High-end electronics in Gavin's home office. Evidence of a life fully furnished, with my credit. At 4:50, we heard the garage door open. I stood in the center of the living room, flanked by Noah and Gregory, heart racing, breathing slow, waiting. Sloane's voice echoed first, light, excited, performative. The caterers should be finished by now, she said. Just wait until you see how the entryway looks with the new sconce. The door from the garage opened. She stepped in carrying shopping bags. Gavin followed with a case of champagne. They both froze. Sloane's face paled. Gavin blinked like he wasn't sure he was awake. Marin, Sloane said slowly, "You're early. How did you get in?" I met her gaze. With the spare key. The one listed in the loan documents you submitted in my name. The silence was instant and sharp. Gavin looked at her. Then at me. What is she talking about? I don't know. Sloane laughed. Too quickly. This is ridiculous. Marin, you can't just break into our house before the party. Gregory stepped forward. Actually, Ms. Hayes has full legal access to this property. As of today, the house is still under her name. I'm Gregory Shaw, representing Ridgeway National Bank's Fraud Investigation Unit. Gavin's confusion deepened. The house is in our names. We signed the papers. No, I said calmly. Sloane forged my signature. She stole my identity to get a loan you two would have never qualified for. The doorbell rang. Guests began arriving. Sloane looked at me, panic rising beneath the practiced smile. We can talk about this later. No, I said, stepping aside. Let's talk about it now. With everyone here. For the next 20 minutes, guests trickled in. Colleagues, neighbors, extended family. Laughter and small talk filled the space. But eyes kept drifting toward me, and Sloane's tension grew with each step. When the house was full, I walked to the center of the room and gently clinked my glass. May I have everyone's attention? Voices quieted. Conversations paused. I'd like to make a toast, I said, my voice steady. To new beginnings. I glanced at Sloane, and full transparency. People smiled, unsure. I'm Marin Hayes, I continued. Some of you know me as Sloane's sister. What you don't know is that this house, everything you see here, was purchased using my identity, without my consent, through a fraudulent mortgage taken out in my name. A hush fell. Sloane's smile froze. She stole my credit, forged my documents, and opened multiple accounts. And while I was left to deal with the financial fallout, she sent me a party invitation. Gregory stepped forward. The bank can confirm all of this. We have digital evidence, including IP logs, altered PDFs, and branch footage. This was not a misunderstanding. Sloane's eyes darted. She's jealous, she said, voice brittle. Marin's always hated when good things happen to me. Noah opened his folder. We also have text messages, browser history, and a technician's statement confirming Ms. Phillips asked how to forge PDF documents last month. Now it was Gavin who stepped back. You told me the down payment came from a trust fund. His voice was hollow. Sloane opened her mouth, closed it. I looked at her, my sister, my ghost, my mirror, and for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. The room was silent. No music, no clinking glasses, no more polite laughter. Just stunned faces, shifting glances, and the sound of Sloane's carefully curated life beginning to crack open. She stood near the staircase, frozen in place, her hands trembling around the stem of a champagne flute she hadn't touched. Her lips parted like she might deny it all again. But this time, there was nowhere left to run. The evidence was laid out. Gregory had walked through the forged loan. Noah had shared screenshots of texts where she discussed accessing my information. Even Gavin, her husband, now stood 3 feet away from her, looking like he'd just stepped off a cliff. Sloane, he said, voice low. Is it true? She looked at him, eyes wild. I was going to fix it, she whispered. We were drowning. Gavin. The company was falling apart. We needed a win. Just something that felt like a fresh start. A fresh start built on a felony, he asked, voice rising. You forged your sister's name. You made me complicit in mortgage fraud. Do you have any idea what that means for my career? I didn't think it would go this far, she said, voice breaking. I thought once we refinanced, once your business stabilized, I'd move it all into our names. She wouldn't even notice. I stepped forward, calm but sharp. You thought I wouldn't notice my credit tanking, my accounts being flagged, a house I never saw becoming my responsibility. That's not a mistake, Sloane. That's theft. Her shoulders sagged. For a moment, She didn't look like the woman who'd posted glossy photos under How Are Blessed. She looked like the version of her I'd seen only once or twice in my life. Unguarded. Caught. Fine, she said, eyes glassy. Yes, I did it. I forged the application. I used your information. I opened the accounts. I'm sorry. Okay, I panicked. But no one said anything. No one moved to comfort her. Because it wasn't panic. It was planning. Gavin backed away, running a hand over his face. I can't believe you let me stand in this house, in front of all these people, and smile like everything was real. I was trying to protect us, she said, the old defensiveness creeping back in. I didn't think you'd understand. You're right, he cut in. I don't. By now, most of the guests had made quiet exits, some murmuring awkward apologies, others avoiding eye contact entirely. The catering team packed up trays in the kitchen, pretending not to hear the unraveling. My parents arrived just as the room emptied, stepping into the house like they'd walked into a thunderstorm mid-strike. My mother stopped short, taking in the scene. My father's expression was unreadable. Mom. Dad. Sloane began, rushing toward them. She's making this sound worse than it is. My father held up a hand. Enough. She froze. That word, spoken from him, carried a weight I hadn't heard in years. We got a call from the bank yesterday, he said. They confirmed the investigation. We came to see if it was really true. And you still showed up, she asked, voice cracking. We showed up, my mother said quietly, because we needed to see who you've become. Sloane's facade shattered. Tears streamed down her face. I just wanted to prove I could have something beautiful, that I wasn't the failure everyone thought I was. You were never a failure, I said softly. You were just unwilling to do the hard parts, the earning, the waiting, the responsibility. No one spoke after that. No one had to. Gregory gathered the documents. Noah closed his folder. Gavin walked out the front door without a word, his keys dangling from one hand. Sloane remained standing alone in the foyer, surrounded by a house full of expensive silence. The grand staircase, the marble floor, the sparkling chandelier. All of it now felt hollow, like a set after the actors had gone home. I turned to leave, my heels clicking softly across the floor she'd once called hers. And for the first time, Sloane didn't follow. The days that followed felt suspended in fog, quiet, procedural, surreal. After the confrontation, after the truth cracked wide open in the middle of Sloane's housewarming, everything moved quickly. Gregory filed a formal report with Ridgeway National's legal team. Noah submitted his investigation materials. My parents, still stunned, called to say they were processing everything. But I already knew what that meant. They didn't know how to grieve a daughter who was still alive, but no longer someone they could trust. I met with Tessa Morgan the following Monday morning in her downtown office. She laid out the options in crisp legal terms. Criminal prosecution is on the table, she said, and the bank would support it fully. Mortgage fraud, identity theft. That's 3 to 5 years in prison, minimum. I sat in silence, staring at a folder marked Hayes v. Phillips. But, she continued, more gently now, there's also a civil path. You can force restitution, full asset transfer, legal responsibility on record. No prison, yet. But the consequences will still follow her for years. And if I do nothing, I asked quietly. Tessa's expression didn't waver. Then you carry the debt. Your credit remains damaged. The bank may foreclose. And any chance of financial recovery, for you, is gone. That was the part most people didn't understand. This wasn't just about revenge or justice. It was about survival. About rebuilding something Sloane had nearly destroyed. I want restitution, I said. Full transfer of the house. Written admissions of guilt. She's out of my financial life. For good. Tessa nodded. We'll prepare the documents. Over the next 2 weeks, the legal gears turned, letters were served, terms were laid out. Meetings were scheduled in neutral offices with neutral tones. Sloane resisted at first, denying, then bargaining, then crying. But none of it worked. The evidence was airtight, the witnesses too many, the silence from former friends and party guests too telling. Gavin, for his part, said little. When presented with the agreement, he signed immediately. It's the only way forward, he told her. We're drowning. This stops it from getting worse. And so, in a sterile conference room with no windows, Sloane Phillips signed away the house she had stolen. She transferred the deed to me. She signed a legal admission of fraud and identity theft. She accepted responsibility for the credit accounts opened in my name. She agreed to enter financial counseling and to have no unsupervised access to any family member's financial information, ever again. When it was over, she sat across from me, pen still in hand, her fingers trembling. I never meant for it to ruin you, she whispered. I just wanted something that felt like winning. I looked at her, not with hatred, not even with anger anymore, just with truth. That's always been your problem, Sloane, I said. You wanted the rewards without the work, but what you took from me, my name, my future, you don't get to keep, not this time. And I stood. I didn't wait for her to speak again, because this wasn't about her anymore. This was about reclaiming the ground I'd quietly surrendered for years, the lines I'd let her cross, the damage I'd allowed, for the sake of peace, or family, or guilt. But peace without boundaries isn't peace. It's quiet erosion. And I was done eroding. 6 months after the papers were signed, I stood barefoot in the kitchen of a 2-bedroom condo just outside Capitol Hill, sunlight pouring through the windows, Eli humming softly as he unpacked dishes beside me, and I realized I could finally breathe again. The house on Oak Ridge Lane had been sold 3 weeks earlier. I never moved in. I couldn't. It never felt like mine, even when the title said otherwise. I treated it like what it was, a compromised asset. I worked with a real estate advisor, sold it quietly, and used the proceeds as a down payment on something smaller, simpler, and truly mine. My credit took time to rebuild. The damage Sloane left behind didn't vanish overnight. But with each passing month, my score rose. With each cleared account, each corrected report, the weight she'd dropped on my future began to lift. I signed up for credit monitoring, locked down every account, and installed a small safe in our new hallway closet. Not out of paranoia, out of wisdom, hard-earned, and worth every ounce of caution, professionally. I returned to work. I kept my head down for a while, unsure how the rumors had traveled. But in time, the tension faded. My clients stayed, my integrity held, and my company gave me what I didn't realize I needed most: normalcy, no pity, just trust. Eli never once made me feel like I was broken. Through every phone call, every document, every sleepless night, he was steady. And a year after the fraud was discovered, on the same date, in fact, he proposed, quietly, on our balcony, with a modest ring and words that still echo when I need them most. You were never defined by what she took. You're defined by what you rebuilt. I said yes without hesitation. We were married that fall in a small ceremony in Discovery Park. No grand venues, no endless guest list, just people who'd stayed, people who mattered. My parents came. Sloane didn't. She sent a card. I read it once and tucked it away. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't an event. It's a boundary, a slow, quiet choice to stop letting someone else's damage bleed into your peace. I haven't forgotten what she did. I probably never will. But I no longer wake up with her choices in my chest. What I do wake up with is space. Space to breathe. Space to trust again. Space to imagine a future where I'm not someone's target, or scapegoat, or second thought. Just Marin, a woman who knows her limits, a woman who protects her name, and a woman, finally, at peace in her own home. Some people take your trust, others take your name, but healing starts when you take it back. I didn't just reclaim my credit, I reclaimed my future, and this time, it's mine, fully, finally, and on my terms. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and let me know how you're taking back your power. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because sometimes the people who try to erase you end up reminding you who you really are.